So thank you so much for joining. My name is Amanda Griffin-Linsmeyer. I'm with the Center for Inclusion and Social Change here on campus, and just want to, as a part of the committee, welcome you to this session. So we have the Equity Advisory Committee panel from the Colorado High School Activities Association, also known as CHASA. We have 4 guests with us today, and we're still missing one, so she's on her way. We're going to get that worked out, but when she gets here, you'll know who she is. First, we have Rhonda Blanford Green, the commissioner, Tom Robinson, the assistant commissioner, Micah Porter, the assistant principal from Alameda International School, and soon to join us, Tarita Walker, the athletic director of East High School. So please help me welcome these fine folks. And
Thank you. Can you hear me? Yes, there you go. She's already given me a short introduction, but my name is Rhonda Blanford Green. We are excited to be here today. If you know high school athletics and activities, we are in game mode. State wrestling starts tomorrow at the Pepsi Center. We just completed our swimming and diving championships, and actually skiing starts tomorrow in Durango. So if you've been watching the news, you know that they expect to get about 20 inches in the next 2 days. So we're hoping that all of our athletes, tonight's opening ceremonies, they get there safely. But having had skate skiing for 6 years at the CHASA office, when it's snowing and you're trying to put courses in and set courses, and we've got kids from all over the state, we go. And so it's going to be pretty miserable out there, but exciting. I'll start off with my introduction. I am a Army brat. Someone just asked where my accent was from. I don't know. I was born in Hawaii. We lived in Alaska. My brother was born in Japan. So I've got a little bit of everything going on there. And lived in Louisiana for a couple of years. I've been back to Colorado, so I say y'all now. I don't know where that 2 years, I'm already saying y'all. Hey, y'all going this place or that place. But grew up as an Army brat, but started in Colorado with my collegiate or with my high school career. I left college high school being the #1 hurdler in the nation. I heard booze earlier, but I was recruited by CU. Went on my recruit trips to Florida, LSU. I almost went to LSU because of the food, right? Louisiana food. And Florida State, and actually went to the University of Nebraska's sight and scene. I don't know booze on the University of Nebraska, okay? But had one of the, sometimes you don't know why you get led a certain direction, but started off, I never lost a hurdle race, indoor, outdoor, for my freshman through sophomore year, and left there as an 18-time All-American, NCAA champion, and my claim to fame is I beat Jackie Joyner at the national championship, and when she sees me, she says that's the last time she beat me, so it's all good. I sit here before you today proudly as the commissioner of CHASA. I'm the first African-American woman in 100-year history to ever run a state association. So thank you. I'll finish up mine, but I will talk a little bit about that. There's something challenging for me when people say you can't, or no one's ever done that, or it's not in our scope, and so I actually lead that way, which probably causes a lot of angst for the people who like structure and all those things. But if someone says, no high school has ever allowed transgenders to participate. 20 years ago, CHASA had the first proposal on the table and structure in place to allow inclusiveness. We were in the forefront of students with disabilities. So I think that's my leadership style, is to what do we do and how do we do it, and there's no roadblocks in our way that we don't take risks. So with that said, that's kind of my introduction, and I'll tell you this. I agreed to be here today because I was going to get to be Oprah. So I am your moderator today, and so I'm just living out that dream that maybe may have been my path along the way if I wasn't a good hurdler. So thank you for having us, and I'm going to turn it over to Tom Robinson.
Thanks, Rhonda. Rhonda is really a star of epic proportions in our office, and just glad to have her. 2 years ago, I was out the door and retiring. She got hired on a Wednesday. She had been in the office before. She made some other trips to various places and then came back and got the job. But she got hired on a Wednesday, and on Thursday she called me and asked me if I would stay. And so just her infectious energy and just her vision kind of drew me back in. So it's been a year and a half already. So I'm still thinking about that retirement, but it's been a great journey. So I've been in education for close to 48 years. I started when I was in grade school as a teacher, not really, but I was a teacher, a coach, an administrator for 31 years at Regis Jesuit High School. During that journey and that time for 25 years, I was a sports official, football sports official, so I was an on-field official, as a referee for about 13 of that 25. And that's really where my passion is, and I'll talk about that. But I also, in terms of this particular activity, in terms of inclusion and diversity, when I finished coaching at Regis, I was a head coach for the varsity basketball team for 10 years. When I stopped that, then I became the diversity director at Regis High School. Predominantly white environment, trying to deal with diversity and inclusion. Until one day I decided to show a film on white privilege, and all things kind of broke loose at that time. But probably had I not been there for 31 years, I might have been out the door. But anyway, just so I have some history with that aspect of it. But it's the fact that I did it is in my DNA, and so it really wasn't as bad as I'm portraying it for sure. But anyway, so a little later on, I think I'll talk about my role at CHASA when I do. So I'll do that when I get to that.
Morning. My name is Micah Porter. I'm an assistant principal, activities and athletics director at Alameda International in Jefferson County. It's my 25th year in education. First of all, I'm really excited to be here with these two fine individuals. A little bit about my story, and I won't go into a whole lot of detail, but I grew up in a small Midwestern community in the Midwest outside of Detroit, and immersed in athletics. It was a huge part of my background as a young person, and ran track at a Division II college, Hillsdale, in southern Michigan. And spent a long time struggling with my own personal identity. I'm probably out at this point in my life, but it took me a long time to get there. And I didn't like who I was for a long, long time. Survived conversion therapy and entered a marriage that I thought would help me in a path that I thought I wanted after years of struggle and continuing to be immersed in the athletic world. I realized that I needed to embrace my authentic self and came out in 2013. And I look back and I reflect on those years and being in Colorado and having leadership in CHASA. I think at this point in my life I would still be a closeted, unhappy man and coach if I hadn't been in Colorado. The leadership that CHASA has had and the vision and progressive inclusion that they've put forth really gave a window of an opportunity for me as a person to be an advocate for LGBT inclusion in the state. And so I want to thank the leaders of CHASA for that. That was a blessing for me personally. And since that time, I've immersed myself in advocacy work for athletes and coaches and administrators from the LGBT perspective in terms of diversity and inclusion. So I'm happy to be here now, very happy and healthy in every way, sitting up here today.
Thank you, Micah. I am going to go back to Micah because I think some of the things that you said are so important. And And the one thing about these types of panels where we're not doing a PowerPoint and clicking and you know, having this structural type conversation is we want you to dialogue with us. So if we hit on something that you think you want to ask a question about, that's how flexible we are. We don't want to be the talking heads up here. We want to know if you've taken the time to come here today, obviously you want to know something about CHASA or where we're going, or maybe ways that you can take something back to the environment that you're working in. Feel free to interrupt us at any time. There's no rules in this right now. We do rules all day, so let's not try to have some kind of rule structure on this. So I want to go back to Micah because I knew him when he was a coach, and he was married. And I went off to another journey professionally, and when I walked in the door, when I was returned back, he came up to me and hugged me and talked about some things that CHASA had done that maybe, I mean, he had other things, I'm sure, outside influences, but some things that CHASA put into place, or conversations or things that we knew were the right directions to go for kids, not realizing that we were also impacting adults, right? Because you guys know in the athletic world, it is not easy for a gay male to come out in any way. We often accept women, right? Because we have this supposedly testosterone and okay, we'll accept you, those are our coaches. But for him to have the courage to live his authentic self in a culture that does not embrace that, I would just like for you to expand on that for them and what we need to be doing as administrators and leaders to make sure someone doesn't have to live closeted or not themselves. So I'm going to put that on you.
You know, no fault of my parents or the environment I grew up in. I just didn't have gay role models in my life, particularly in the athletic world. And, you know, I grew up in the playground playing smear the queer. And the language that was used in the locker room and in sports in general just wasn't conducive to a young person like myself that was struggling with their identity. I thought there was something wrong with me. And I chose Hillsdale College, which I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail about that school, but it's one of the most conservative schools in the country. And I knew there was no way for me to embrace myself and be fully authentic through that. Really what became a turning point for me, and one of my few regrets I have is never being able to compete as an openly out athlete, because I had no idea what that would look like or what that would look like for me as an athlete. But from a coach's perspective, I wanted to be able to do what I love to do, which was be involved in athletics. I wanted to coach, I wanted to celebrate the successes of all my athletes without having to hide who I was or be anything different than who I was. And, you know, from an LGBT perspective as opposed to socioeconomic or ethnic background, you can't really see a person's sexual orientation. Sometimes gender expression can be a part of that. But for me to go out and be involved in sports and to coach and to be around my peers who I looked up to, this constant fear of not being accepted in that community was deeply haunting. And it was terrifying that someone might find out that I was gay or criticize me for who I was as a person in the environment, in sports, and something that I really love to do. My ex-wife was a co-coach with me. I mean, we coached for 20 years together. And we were fairly high-profile coaches in our respective sport, track, which is Rhonda's background as well. And so every step of the way, I got more deeply immersed in this culture of heteronormative athletic environment. But it came to a breaking point for me personally, and to know that CHASA was there, seeing initiatives through their gender policy or the You Can Play efforts that they did, just knowing those small, I wouldn't define them as small, but those very clear messages that this was an organization that was supportive of all individuals, of whether they're athletes or coaches or administrators, was deeply meaningful, and it gave me certainly gave me the courage to come out and be one now. So I don't know if that helps. But.
Wow, that's wonderful. I'm going to speak to our role and responsibility, and I don't know what journey everybody in this room is on, but we all speak to what we feel is our responsibility. This is rare. This is rare that you see the commissioner and the associate commissioner, number two, both being, first of all, African American, right? And then to have the diversity that we have in our office. There's only, out of 51 state associations, there's only one other association that has 2 minorities in that position. And so we do take our role and responsibility. We don't need to go out and say, look at us, it's who we are. And we know that there is an extra added piece. First of all, educators have that anyway. Whether you're black, white, female, male, there's something innate in us that when we're working with kids, we're trying to make things fair, and we're trying to make things equitable, and we're trying to give all students an opportunity, right? Whether you live in a trailer off Colfax, or you live in a mansion in Boulder on top of Boulder Hill, I don't know if that's but you live in a mansion on top of Boulder Hill, we want every kid to feel like they have an opportunity, because we know what athletics and activities do for you. I don't sit in this chair without having been participated in activities as well as athletics. I played the trombone. I was a cheerleader. Actually, I told someone if they had scholarships in cheer, I don't even know if I ran track. So it's like you have this diverse opportunity that builds you into the person you're going to be. And now they call it C-suite, but back in the day they used to say 85% of women in Fortune 500 participated in some activity along the way. Now with Sheryl Sandberg, we all say C-suite. We got to get to the C-suite, right? So now they're saying 89 to 90% of women that sit in the C-suite and come to the table have participated in activities or athletics in some manner. So I'm about to ask Tom a question, but no, as I segue into that question, it's really about our feeling of responsibility and how, not just when we walk in a room, does that portray a responsibility to make sure opportunities are equitable for all kids, all coaches, all adults, but where he sits in his role, and he really downplayed his background, because we have an official that's done the Rose Bowl, and he always says I add stuff on there, but the Rose Bowl, the Orange Bowl, what's the other one? He's humble. No, there's a couple more, but he was the head referee. Tom is in the Hall of Fame of officials. I think that's the one. I always want to say Cooperstown, but that's baseball. So I know is it in Ohio?
It's the National Football Foundation Hall of Fame.
Yes, Hall of Fame. So he is a star in his own right. But
So I can tell you this,
he won't let me keep bragging on it.
I'll say something though. So I was on the field for 25 years, and then that's when I got hired on a chassis in 2000. And then there was a 4-year period there where I was working for the Mountain West Conference, and just I was out there observing officials, just helping them. I was no longer on the field. I had bad knees, finally got a total knee, it changed my life. But so that 4 years, and then in that 5th year, that's when instant replay came into vogue. You know, this play is under further review, right? You hear it all the time. It's just kind of a fabric of college football now. So I got involved in replay. So I was a full-fledged replay official, and did that from 2005 to 2000. I'm still doing it through that time. I'm really working now for the Big 12. And I go to a remote center every weekend, and we do plays from there. It's like I'm walking through the back door wondering, how is it me walking through that door kind of thing? But again, it's my passion. 3 years ago, I was the replay official in the national championship game between Alabama and Clemson. So anyway, just some dream comes true for me, for sure. But I think Rhonda's going to talk about my duty and my responsibility at CHASA. So we register every year about 4,500 sports officials to do all our contests in all of our sports. And we have an officials organization for each of them. And they kind of do their own thing, instruction and training, and that's how we contract with them. But those 4,500 officials do our events. So wrestling officials, we're going to have 35 that are doing the state tournament, so we select them, and they're ready to go. We're in the process of starting our basketball playoffs this week, started yesterday, right? Moving through that. We got a committee for that, and we select officials for those events, and we do that for all of our events. And I'm at the top of the chain of that, and I monitor that process pretty closely, because like Rhonda says, what we do here in all aspects of CHASA is we try to make the playing field fair. So in that aspect, it's my job and responsibility to make sure that that pool of officials that are working those games, that pool is larger in my mind than it is smaller. All right? That you're not seeing the same officials year after year after year working those contests. And so I've created structures in every single one of our sports to make that happen. It's interesting that we do that, and we get votes, and we have a rubric that we use, and you kind of get into a rut because the majority of officials that actually officiate our contests are white males. That's just the way it is. And so what happens? You get a female here or there that wants to officiate, and really they're good at officiating as well as males. So how do you get them into that mix? And so it has taken some time, but with putting the right procedures in place and with the right kind of urging and the right kind of messaging to the committee, right? Eventually you can get, for example, with basketball, you can create crews of 3, and you can make sure that, you know, we're getting females from every area of the state, and we put them on a crew. And then we say in the finals, that crew is going to work all those games in that class. And that includes boys' games, all right? And we've had situations where, you know, male coaches have gone nuts because there's a female official, I think, all right? But over time, if you keep doing that, all of a sudden it becomes the norm. And that's the key to it. And so, it's not that I'm selecting them directly, but every chance I get, if it's the first meeting with that committee, talking about how we're going to do this, just keep getting that messaging out there. All of a sudden, I missed the first meeting this year, and the messaging gets taken care of by everybody on the committee because they've heard it over time, and they accept it. So that's my message, and it seems like that's kind of what we do at CHASA. I don't have opportunities to hire people into the office, not really. I might have some input, but so I don't have a role that's direct in that process of hiring people. So we get a diverse and inclusive staff. That's not my role, but the constant messaging of why we need to have that, and then what it does to the environment and to the culture, right? Which really is kind of what happened with Micah, takes place. I would say that, I don't know if it's true with how Rhonda was hired at CHASA before me as an assistant commissioner. Then I came after her. I don't know if we were hired because there was something like this was going on within that system. And I think it was. I think there was some people that were disenchanted with like who is representing them, maybe having conversations with the commissioner then at that time, and that kind of leads to, maybe if it's received correctly, leads to the next step, right, of, okay, I better pay attention to what they're telling me, and then all of a sudden, you do some hiring practices, and then Rhonda gets hired. And you would think, and I probably want to encourage that concept, is that that's kind of, it's like a cycle, and that's what happens, it evolves over time. You want it to happen immediately, but it doesn't, and so I think in looking back, that's kind of what happened in that case. I know that in terms of officiating, in the late 90s, I got there in 2000, but in the late 90s, there were some basketball officials that were black officials that were upset that they were not getting the top games. And I know they met with the commissioner at that time. I just knew that, just kind of what was going on in my world. And they created, in the metro area, a group called DABO, which is the Denver Area Black Basketball Officials Association. That didn't go over very well with the larger group, like how can they do that? How can you get that done? But I benefited from that group because there were some leaders in that group that were grooming young African Americans to become good basketball officials. It was outstanding. And so when I came on, they were there already. It wasn't my doing, they were there. And it was just my efforts to kind of get them incorporated in that process. You know, so you go from every time you trot out on the floor, if it's a black team and a white team playing, then it's a trio of white officials, white males coming up. And the perception was, if that was the case, that the black team wasn't going to get a fair shot. That's the perception. And real or not, because officials are really supposed to officiate fairly, right? That was the messaging. And so I just made sure as I was doing my thing that was never going to happen, ever. And with that, you get to a championship game and you get, I can remember back early in the 2000s, Thunderbirds playing Denver East, and it was 2 men at that time, and in that championship game, it was an African-American official and a Latino worked the game, and worked it very well, to where the losing team coach from Denver East came to me and said that was one of the best officiated games we've had, and just embrace that whole thing. So anyway, that's kind of a touch on what I do. I do it pretty intentionally. I think all the people around me and all those committees who do that kind of know the messaging that's happening. In terms of and I'm taking a lot of time here, but in terms of the female officials that we have, so this is what's going to happen probably, just looking at the notes. Like I said, I wasn't at the first meeting because I was doing something with my golf responsibilities. But we're going to have a female on the 5A Boys Championship, and we're going to have a female on the 4A Boys Championship. Now, some people would say that they want to see 3 females on there. Those are the 2 top classifications in our system. Those games are coveted by all officials, right? And that's going to be the makeup of those crews. So anyway, that's just kind of what's going on in Chassa relative to something you would not even think about, sports officials. So